Good morning and welcome to Brownville Community Church. This morning, instead of Zoom, I am going to be recording this message and then posting it to YouTube and Facebook because many of our members are going to be preparing and are serving food and bringing a Valentine's meal to the residents of Quarry Pines this morning during the worship hour. So this will enable them to be able to watch this later. Before we begin, I have two announcements. The first, I want to say Happy Valentine's Day to my congregation and to everyone watching. I hope that you are able to give someone a kiss or a hug that you love, or if no one is at home with you, you can reach out and call someone and tell them that you love them. And while we should be doing this every day, it is also nice to receive those calls and to make those calls to our loved ones. And the second thing I want to let people know and remind people of that this is the beginning of Chinese New Year. And we have a beloved member of our congregation, Fiona, who is Chinese. And she, unlike many people who are Chinese, are unable to return home for the New Year. This is something that is traditionally people travel many thousands of miles to get home for New Year's, just like we do at Christmas and Thanksgiving. And they, like us, are unable to go home. And I know we have some very dear friends in our county who are of Chinese descent. And so if you see them around town, wish them a Happy New Year, because it is a very special time. This morning, I am simply going to read the scriptures, give you my message, and read our pastoral prayer. And next week, we will be back to our Zoom format of worship. So let us be in the spirit of worship. Our first reading this morning, our Old Testament reading, comes from 2 Kings, chapter 2, verses 1 through 14. Now, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of prophets who were in Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Keep silent." Elijah said to him, "Elisha, stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. The company of prophets who were at Jericho drew near to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Be silent." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. 50 men from the company of prophets also went and stood at some distance from them, and as they both were standing by the Jordan. Then Elijah took his mantle and rolled it up and struck the water. The water was parted on one side and to the other until the two of them crossed on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I may do for you before I am taken from you." Elisha said, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit." He responded, "You have asked a hard thing. Yet if you see me as I am being taken from you, it will be granted you. If not, it will not." As they continued walking and talking, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them. And Elijah ascended in a whirlwind into heaven. Elijah kept watching and crying out, "Father, Father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." But when he could no longer see him, he grasped his clothes and tore them into two pieces. And our gospel reading this morning comes from the Gospel according to Mark, chapter 9, verses 2 through 10. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. and he was transfigured before them. And his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to him Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice. "This is my son, my beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. When they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what this rising from the dead could mean. Here ends the readings this morning. May God bless their hearing and understanding. The title of my sermon is kind of generic, but I think it describes it well. Thoughts on Transfiguration Sunday. Then the subtitle is Seeing Something in a New Way, in a Different Light, Something More. So I have 3 thoughts / observations on the light of Transfiguration Sunday. First, I want to tell you about an experience I had. This week, I was driving down I-95, something I have probably done thousands of times. And somewhere between Bangor and Newport, I came upon a stretch of road where all the trees, and I mean all the trees, looked as if a snowmaking machine had blasted them with snow. There was not a bit of green or brown, just a sparkling, dazzling fairy tale white. Though I have driven that stretch of road more times than I can count, I have not thought about those trees or grass or bushes once. Until Wednesday, that was. On Wednesday, I truly saw them, each one individually draped in a rainbow of white snow, each just shined. A beauty I could not have ever conjured in my own mind. Next week, when I drive that stretch, no doubt it will be back to its spare winter look. Gray and evergreen, brown and white, just like everything else. Yet I will not be able to forget the incredible light on that stretch of road and know that it contains more. In a similar, more profound way, in our gospel lesson today, we have Jesus radiating light, dazzling and bright in front of Peter, James, and John on top of a mountain. Sparkly Jesus as they had never seen him before, talking with long dead Elijah and Moses. Seeing Jesus in all his light and glory, the little band of people was terrified at first. It was also strange and new. They had never seen Jesus this way. In the intensity of the moment, Peter speaks some nonsense about making little houses for Jesus, Moses, and Elijah. And almost as soon as he does, the light and Moses and Elijah are gone. And then a voice, "This is my son, my beloved. Listen to him." The 3 on the mountaintop saw Jesus in a new light, as someone more than a leader of their band of religious reformers, as someone far bigger and more important than they had originally thought, someone who was on par with Moses and Elijah. No, better than par. Jesus was God's beloved son, and someone, who was that, was commanding them to listen to him. Can you imagine what the hike back down the mountain that day was like for the 4 of them after that happened? After they realized who Jesus really was? My trip down 95 compares in comparison to the Transfiguration story, I realize. It shows how we humans can see old things in new ways. We can, when we least expect it, be startled into new truths. We can come to understand the world and our lives in radically new ways, and then never be the same again. If the stretch of road on 95 never appears as dazzling white again to me, I am not the same person I was before because I had that experience. There's a saying that a person never steps in the same river twice. Our lives and the flowing river are constantly changing. The story of the Transfiguration affirms this truth. The story made it clear to the disciples and us that though Jesus was a man just as they, he was also more. The story teaches us that there is more to divinity in this world than we can imagine or explain. What it also teaches is that sometimes just the glimpse of divinity in our lives can overwhelm us in strange ways. We feel we must do something in response. That sometimes doing something or wanting to do something to cherish the experience ultimately diminishes it. Consider Peter's suggestion to make little houses for Jesus, Moses, and Elijah so as to make the experience permanent and lasting. As soon as he blurts it all out, the light, the moment, the prophets, they're all gone. Now compare the Transfiguration story to the relationship between Elijah and Elisha in the time leading up to Elijah's death. That was the Old Testament reading I read at the beginning. Each time they encounter the area prophets in different towns, the prophets remark on how close to death Elijah looks. And yet, what is Elisha's response? Yes, I know. Keep silent. Then, despite Elijah's wish that Elisha let him go ahead alone, Elisha journeys on with him, saying, each time, as the Lord lives and you yourself live, I will not leave you. Despite the disciples' desire to tell others what they saw on the mountaintop, Jesus admonishes them to be silent until the time is right. Silence in the face of times of transition, transformation from life to death, from confusion to understanding, can be a good response. A time to more fully take in what is or what has just happened. Silence can let the dazzling light enter inside and then grow us in new ways. In a world that is changing so much from hour to hour, minute to minute, silence, reflection, observation, and measured speech can be our best companion. When we turn off the radio, the television, or put down the paper or the work at hand, we can take in light, then consider if and how we can reflect it back out into the world. In silence, we can find love, life, and meaning for our futures, even in the presence of death. Elisha did so after Elijah's passing, as did the disciples, and we do now. My second musing is this. Another place I saw Jesus transfigured was in learning about the life of Fanny Crosby, a woman who wrote over 8,000 hymns. She is the author of the beloved hymn, Blessed Assurance, and many more. She became blind when she was just 6 weeks old, and though she could not see, it did not mean that she was unable to feel God's shape and movement in her life. With one of her senses silenced, her other senses grew in compensation. Consider this, Crosby memorized huge portions of the Bible. She believed her blindness was a gift because it enabled her to develop a richer interior life. Crosby had to use over 200 pseudonyms as publishers did not want so many hymns from the same person in their hymnals. And as remarked in a prayer I read, though blinded in infancy, Fanny Crosby beheld God's glory with a great clarity of vision. Isn't that what we all wish and hope for? To behold God's glory with great clarity of vision? To be able to see purity with our hearts, not without our eyes, but with our hearts, and then offer back a worthy response. This, I believe, is what Elisha was waiting for as he patiently stayed with Elijah until the end, and what Peter so desperately wanted to hold on to. What is our worthy response to God's out of this world presence in our lives? How can we be more like Fanny Crosby and develop in our hearts a clearer vision on the nature of God? Sometimes when we are patient, when we see things in a new light, we learn a bit more about God and ourselves. Sometimes we might rush to capture and adopt this light into our lives, only to be saddened or frustrated when it slips through our fingers. And sometimes maybe we are able to pause in wonder and awe at the extraordinary light or life that we are in presence of, and find surprisingly the true sweet spot of life, of faith. Whatever happens when we catch a bit of God shimmering, whether we are patient or not, God still shines and dazzles. And finally, my third musing. I come to think of the transfiguring light that surrounds and emanated from Jesus on the mountaintop that day long ago to be like a giant spotlight on him. You know how on a stage, when the spot catches the leading man or a lady in a play, and everything else fades away to darkness? It is then, only then, when our eyes and ears are no longer distracted by the chorus of other voices, that we can hear just how rich the actor's baritone voice is, or how when the leading actress sings, it is so high and clear that it seems almost magical and truly is more than all imagination. Perhaps it took the removal of all the distractions of traveling and teaching and the crowds for the disciples to finally see what was right in front of them all along: divinity in humanity. Perhaps it is the same for us. So I ask this week to try to strip away what distracts and ask yourself, where have you seen or felt God, divinity, the light of Christ in a way in your life that was unlike anything else? And how did it change you? Find my 5th page. This Wednesday is Ash Wednesday, which marks the beginning of Lent. It is a season when we delve into time in and as a spiritual discipline. A time when we think about the absence of light, our mortality, and what it would be like without the light of Christ in our lives. It's also a time when we can focus the spotlights of our hearts on Jesus and see him in a new way, or in more ways than we have before. Be it sunshine on winter snow, or a song, or something else seen or heard or understood differently, may the blessed assurance of Jesus's transformative power carry you forward on this next part of our journey together. Look for the light around you. Look for glittering transformations, big and small, in nature, people, the season, and mark them in your heart. Reflect on it all, and don't be surprised if things start to change. Thanks be to God. Amen. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace, this day and always. Amen.